If you can't get close to other people, it's because you don't know how to be close to your own inner child. The child in you is scared and hurting. Be there for your child. One of the core issues that we want to explore is healing the forgotten child within. Most of us have ignored our inner child for far too long. Doesn't matter how old you are. There is a little child within you who needs love and acceptance. If you're a woman, no matter how self-reliant you are, you have a little girl who's very tender and needs help. And if you are a man, no matter how macho you are, no matter how old you are, you still have a little boy inside of you who craves warmth and affection. Every age that you have been is within you, within your consciousness and memory. As children, when something went wrong, you tended to believe that there was something wrong with you. Children develop the idea that if they could only do it right, then parents or whoever would love them, and they wouldn't beat them or punish them. So whenever the child wants something and doesn't get it, he or she believes, I'm not good enough, I'm defective. And as we grow older, we reject certain parts of ourselves. At this point in our lives right now, we need to begin to make ourselves whole and accept every part of who we are. The part that did all the stupid things, the part that was funny looking, the part that was scared, the part that was very foolish and silly, the part that had egg on its face, every single part of ourselves. I think that we often turn off or tune out around the age of 5. We make that decision because we think that there is something wrong with us, and we're not going to have anything to do with the child anymore. There is a parent inside as well. You have a child and you have a parent, and most of the time the parent scolds the child, almost on a non-stop basis. If you listen to your inner dialogue, you can hear the scolding. You can hear the parent tell you what you are doing wrong or how you are not good enough. Consequently, we begin a war with ourselves, and we start to criticize ourselves the way our parents have been criticizing us. You're stupid, you're not good enough, you don't do it right, screwed up again. It becomes a habit pattern. When we become adults, most of us totally ignore the child within us, or we criticize the child in the same way we used to be criticized. We continue the pattern over and over again. I once heard John Bradshaw, author of several marvelous books on healing the inner child, say that each of us has 25,000 hours of parent tapes within us by the time we are adults. How many hours of those tapes do you think are telling you how wonderful you are? How much says that you are loved, or that you are bright and intelligent, or that you could do anything you wanted to and would grow up to be the greatest person? In reality, how many hours of those tapes are saying no, no, no in all its many forms? It's no wonder we say no to ourselves, or should, all the time. We are responding to those old tapes. However, they are only tapes and are not the reality of your being. They are not the truth of your existence. They are just tapes you carry within, and they can be erased or re-recorded. Every time you say that you are scared, realize it is the child in you who's scared. The grown-up really isn't afraid, yet the adult isn't being there for the child. The adult and the child need to develop a loving relationship with each other. Talk to each other about everything you do. I know it may sound silly, but it works. Let the child know that no matter what happens, you will never turn away or run away. You will always be there for it and love it. For instance, if, when you were very young, You had a bad experience with a dog. That is, maybe it scared you or even bit you. The little child inside could still be frightened of dogs, even though now you are a great big adult. You may see a dog on the street that is tiny, but the little child inside you reacts in a total panic. It says, "Dog, I'm going to be hurt." This is a wonderful opportunity for the adult inside of you to say to the child, "It's okay, I'm grown up now, I will take care of you. I won't let that dog hurt you. You don't have to be frightened anymore." Start comforting your own child in this way. Healing the hurts of the past. I have found that working with the inner child is most valuable in helping to heal the hurts of the past. We are not always in touch with the feelings of the frightened little child within us. If your childhood was full of fear and battling, and you now mentally beat yourself up, you are continuing to treat your inner child in much the same way. The child inside, however, has no place to go. You need to go beyond your parents' limitations. You need to connect with the little lost child inside. He or she needs to know that you care. Take a moment now and tell your child that you care. I care for you. I love you. I really love you. Maybe you've been saying this to the big person, the adult inside you. So start talking now to the little child. Visualize that you are taking him or her by the hand and go everywhere together for a few days. And see what wonderfully joyous experiences you can have together. You need to communicate with that part of yourself. What are the messages you want to hear? Sit down quietly, close your eyes, and talk to your child. If you haven't talked to them in 62 years, it may take a few times before the child will believe that you really want to talk to it. Be persistent. I want to talk to you. I want to see you. I want to love you. And you will eventually connect. You may see the child inside you, you may feel it, or you may hear it. One of the statements that you can make when you first talk to your child is an apology. Say that you are sorry that you haven't talked to it in all these years, or that you are sorry for scolding it for so long. Tell the child you want to make up for all the time spent apart from each other. Ask it how you can make it happy. Ask the child what frightens it. Ask how you can help. And ask what it wants from you. Start out with simple questions, and you will get the answers. What can I do to make you happy? What would you like today? For instance, you can say to the child, "I'm going to work. What do you want to do?" They may answer, "Go to the beach." The communication will have begun. In your mind's eye, see them going to the beach and having fun. Be consistent. If you can take just a few moments a day to begin to connect with the little person inside of you, life is going to be a lot better. Communicating with your inner child. Some of you may already be doing inner child work. There are many books on the subject, and many workshops and lectures are given about it. Self-Parenting by John Pola III is excellent, and it's filled with wonderful exercises and activities that you can do with your inner child. If you are serious about doing practical work with your inner child, I recommend that you pick up this book. As I've said before, there is a lot of help offered in this area. You are not alone and helpless, but you need to reach out and ask for help so that you can get assistance. Another suggestion I have is to find a photograph of yourself as a child and really look at the photograph. Do you see a miserable little kid? Do you see a happy child? Wherever you see, connect with it. If you see a frightened child, ask why it was frightened and start doing something to make it feel better. Find several photos of your younger self and talk to the child in each photo. It also helps to talk to your child in the mirror. If you have a nickname as a child, use that name. Have a box of tissues handy. I suggest that you sit down in front of a mirror because if you're standing, as soon as it gets difficult, you will run out the door. Instead, sit down with your box of tissues and start talking. Another exercise you can do is to communicate through writing. Again, lots of information will surface. Use 2 different colored pens or felt markers. With one colored pen in your dominant hand, write a question. With the other colored pen in your non-dominant hand, let your child write the answer. It's a very fascinating exercise. When you are writing the question, the adult thinks it knows the answer. But by the time you pick up the pen with the awkward hand, the answer often comes out quite differently than expected. You can draw together too. Many of you probably loved drawing and coloring when you were little children until you were told to be neat and not to draw outside of the lines. So begin drawing again. Use your non-dominant hand to draw a picture about an event that just happened, and notice how you feel. Ask your child a question and just let it draw with the non-dominant hand and see what it shows. If you can get together with others in small core groups or support groups, you can work on these ideas together. You can all let your inner children draw pictures. Then you can sit around and discuss what the pictures mean. The information you receive can be surprisingly insightful. Play with your little child. Do things that your child likes to do. When you were little, what did you really like to do? And when was the last time you did it? Too often, the parent inside us stops us from having fun because it's not the adult thing to do. So take the time to play and have fun. Do the silly things you did when you were young, such as jumping in piles of leaves and running under the hose spray. Watch other children at play. It will bring back memories of the games you played. If you want more fun in your life, make the connection with your inner child and come from that space of spontaneity and joy. I promise that you will start having more fun in your life. Were you welcomed as a child? Were your parents really glad you were born? Were they delighted with your sexuality? Or did they want the opposite sex? Did you feel you were wanted as a child? Was there a celebration when you arrived? Whatever the responses were then, welcome your child now. Create a celebration. Tell it all the wonderful things you would tell a little baby who is welcomed into its new life. What is it you always wanted your parents to tell you when you were a child? What was it they never said that you wanted to hear? All right, tell your child that very thing. Tell it to your child every day for a month while looking in the mirror and see what happens. If you had alcoholic or abusive parents as a child, you can meditate and visualize them as sober, gentle people. Give your child what it wants. It has probably been deprived for too long. Start visualizing the sort of life you would like to have with this child. When the child feels safe and happy, it can trust you. Ask, what do I need to do so that you can trust me? Again, you will be amazed at some of the answers. If you had parents who are not loving at all, and it's really hard for you to relate to them, find a picture of what you think a loving father or unloving mother looks like. Put the pictures of a loving parents around the photo of yourself as a child. Create some new images. Rewrite your childhood if you must. The beliefs that you learned when you were little are still inside the child. If your parents had rigid ideas and you're very hard on yourself or tend to build walls, your child is probably still following your parents' rules. If you continue to pick on yourself for every mistake, it must be very scary for your inner child to wake up in the morning. What are you going to yell at me about today? What our parents did to us in the past was their consciousness. We are the parents now. We are using our consciousness. If you are still refusing to take care of the little child, you are stuck in self-righteous resentment. Invariably, it means there is still someone to forgive. So what is it you haven't forgiven yourself for? What do you need to let go of? Well, whatever it is, just let it go. If we are not giving the child praise and attention now, our parents aren't to blame. They were doing what they thought was right in that particular space and time. However, now in the present moment, we know what we can do to nourish the child within us. Those of you who have had or have a pet know what it's like to come home and have the pet greet you at the door. It doesn't care what you're wearing. It doesn't care how old you are, or if you have wrinkles, or how much money you made today. The animal only cares that you're there. It loves you unconditionally. Do that for yourself. Be thrilled that you are alive and that you are here. You are the one person you are going to live with forever. Until you are willing to love your inner child, it's very hard for other people to love you. Accept yourself unconditionally and open-heartedly. I find that it is often very helpful to create a medication to help your child feel safe. Since I was a child of incest, I invented a wonderful imagery for my little girl. First of all, she has a fairy godmother who looks just like Billy Burke in The Wizard of Oz, because that's what really appeals to her. I know that when I'm not with her, she is with her fairy godmother, and she is always safe. She also lives in a penthouse way high up, with a doorman and 2 large dogs, so she knows that no one will ever hurt her again. When I can make her feel absolutely safe, then I, as the adult, can help her to release the old painful experiences. There was a time recently when I'd off center and cried for 2 hours. I realized that the little child in me suddenly felt very hurt and unprotected. I had to tell her that she wasn't bad or wrong, rather that she was reacting to something that had happened. So as quickly as I was able to, I did some affirmations and meditated, knowing that there was a power far greater that would support and love me. After that, the little girl didn't feel so afraid and alone. I'm also a great believer in teddy bears. When you were very little, often your teddy bear was your very first friend. It was your confidant because you could tell it all your secrets and troubles, and it never snitched on you. It was always there for you. Take your teddy bear out of the closet now and let your child have it once again, or buy a new one. I think it would also be marvelous for hospitals to supply teddy bears in all the beds, so that when the little child in us feels alone and frightened in the middle of the night, they could have a teddy bear to hug. The many parts of you. Relationships are wonderful, marriages are wonderful, but the reality is they are all temporary. However, your relationship with you is eternal. It goes on forever. Love the family within you, the child, the parent, the teenager, and your own adult. Remember, there is a teenager inside you too. Welcome that teenager. Work with the teen as you work with a little child. What were all the difficulties that you went through as a teenager? Ask your team the question that you ask your child. Help the teenager through the intimidating episodes and apprehensive moments of puberty and beyond. Make these times okay. Learn to love your teenager as you learn to love your child and yourself. We can't love and accept each other until we love and accept that lost child within us. How old is the little lost child within you? 3, 4, 5? Usually the child is less than 5 years old, because that is generally when the child shuts down out of the need to survive. Take your child by the hand and love it. Create a wonderful life for you and your child. Say to yourself, I'm willing to learn to love my child. I am willing. The universe will respond. You will find ways to heal your child and yourself. If we want to heal, we must be willing to feel our feelings and move through them to the other side for the healing. Remember, our higher power is always available to support us in our efforts. No matter what your early childhood was like, the best or the worst, you and only you are in charge of your life now. You can spend your time blaming your parents or your early environment, but all that accomplishes is to keep you stuck in victim patterns. It never helps you get the good you say you want. Love is the biggest eraser I know. Love erases even the deepest and most painful memories, because love goes deeper than anything else. If your mental images of the past are very strong, and you keep affirming it's all their fault, you stay stuck. Do you want a life of pain or one of joy? The choice and power are always within you. Look into your eyes and love you and the little child within. Chapter 10. Growing Up and Getting Old. Be as understanding with your parents as you want them to be with you. Communicating with our parents. When I was growing up, my teenage years were the most difficult of all. I had so many questions, but I did not want to listen to those who thought they had the answers, especially adults. I wanted to learn everything by myself because I did not trust the information that grown-ups gave me. I felt particular animosity towards my parents because I was an abused child. I could not understand how my stepfather could treat me the way he did, nor could I understand how my mother could simply ignore what he was doing to me. I felt cheated and misunderstood, and I was certain that my family specifically and the world in general were against me. Through my many years spent in the counseling of others, particularly young people, I have found that many people share the same feelings about their parents that I had about mine. Some of the words I hear teenagers use to describe how they feel are trapped, judged, watched, and misunderstood. Of course, it would be great to have parents who would be accommodating in any given situation. However, in most cases, that is not possible. Although our parents are merely human beings like the rest of us, we often feel that they are being unfair and unreasonable and have no understanding of what we are going through. One young man I counseled had a very difficult time relating to his father. He felt that they had nothing in common, and when his father spoke to him, it was simply to utter some negative or belittling comment. I asked the young man if he knew how his grandfather had treated his father, and he admitted that he didn't. His grandfather had died before the young man was born. I suggested that he ask his father about his own childhood and how it affected him. At first the young man was hesitant because it was uncomfortable to talk to his father without feeling he would be ridiculed or judged. However, he took the plunge and agreed to approach his father. The next time I saw him, the young man seemed more at ease. "Wow," he exclaimed, "I didn't realize what kind of a childhood my own father had." Apparently his grandfather had insisted that all of his children address him as sir, and they lived by the old standard the children were to be seen but not heard. If they dared to utter one contrary word, they were severely beaten. No wonder his father was critical. When we grow up, many of us have the good intentions of treating our children differently than the way we were treated. However, we learn from the world around us, and sooner or later, we begin to sound and act just like our parents. In the case of this young man, his father inflicted the same kind of verbal abuse on his son that his own father had heaped on him. He may not have intended to do so. He was merely acting in a way consistent with his own upbringing. However, the young man came to understand a little more about his father, and as a result, they were able to communicate more freely. Although it would take some effort and patience on both their parts before their level of communication would be ideal, at least they were moving in the right direction. I strongly believe that it is very important for all of us to take the time to find out more about our parents' childhoods. If your parents are still alive, you can ask them, what was it like when you were growing up? What was love like in your family? How did your parents punish you? What kind of peer pressure did you have to face in those days? Did your parents like your friends? Did you have a job while you were growing up? By learning more about our parents, we can see the patterns that have shaped who they are, and in turn, see why they treat us as they do. As we learn to empathize with our parents, we will see them in a new, more loving light. You may be able to open doors to a more communicative, loving relationship, one that has mutual respect and trust. If you have difficulty even talking with your parents, first start in your mind or in front of the mirror. Imagine yourself telling them, "There's something I want to speak to you about. I want you to know who I am." Go through this process several days in a row. It will help you decide what you want to say and how to say it. Or do a meditation and in your mind talk to each of your parents and clean up your old issues. Forgive them and forgive yourself. Tell them you love them. Then prepare to tell them the same things in person. At one of my groups, a young man told me he had a lot of anger and that he didn't trust others. He recycled this pattern of distrust over and over again in all his relationships. When we got to the root of the problem, he told me that he was so angry with his father for not being the person he wanted him to be. Again, when we are on a spiritual pathway, it's not up to us to change the other person. First of all, we need to release all the pent-up feelings we harbor against our parents. And then we need to forgive them for not being who we wanted them to be. We always want everyone else to be like us, to think like us, to dress like us, to do what we do. However, as you know, we are all so very different. In order to have the space to be ourselves, we need to give that space to others. By forcing our parents to be something that they are not, we cut off our own love. We judge our parents just the way that they judge us. If we were to share with our parents, we need to begin by erasing our own preconceived judgments of them. Many of you continue to have power struggle games with your parents as you grow older. Parents push a lot of buttons. So if you want to stop playing the game, you are going to have to stop taking a part in it. It's time for you to grow up and decide what you want. You can begin by calling your parents by their first names. Calling them mommy and daddy when you are in your 40s only keeps you stuck in the little child world. Start becoming two adults instead of parent and child. Another suggestion is to write an affirmative treatment that decals the kind of relationship you want with your mother and or father. Begin declaring these words for yourself. After a while, you can tell him or her face to face. If your mother or father is still pushing your buttons, you are not letting either of them know how you really feel. You have a right to have the life you want. You have a right to be an adult. It may not be easy, I know. First decide what it is that you need, and then tell your mother or father what that is. Don't make them wrong. Ask, how can we work this out? Remember, with understanding comes forgiveness, and with forgiveness comes love. When we progress to the point where we can love and forgive our parents, we will be well on our way to being able to enjoy fulfilling relationships with everyone in our lives. Teens need self-esteem. It alarms me that the rate of suicide among our teenagers is so on the rise. It seems that more and more young people feel overwhelmed by the responsibilities of life and would just as soon give up rather than to persevere and experience the multitude of adventures that life has to offer. Much of this problem has to do with the way we, as adults, expect them to respond to life situations. Do we want them to react as we would? Do we bombard them with negativity? The period between 10 and 15 can be a very critical time. Children in that age group have the tendency to conform, and they will do anything to be accepted by their peers. In their need for acceptance, they often hide their true feelings for fear they will not be accepted and loved for whom they really are. The peer pressure and societal stress that I experienced when I was young pale in comparison to that which today's young people must endure. And yet, when I was 15, due to physical and mental abuse, I left home and school to be on my own. Think how jarring it must be for the child of today to have to deal with drug abuse, physical abuse, sexually transmitted diseases, peer pressure and gangs, family problems, and on a global level, threat of nuclear war, environmental upheavals, crime, and so much more. As a parent, you can discuss the differences between negative and positive peer pressure with your teen. Peer pressure is all around us from the moment we're born until the day we leave the planet. We must learn how to deal with it and not let it control us. Similarly, it is important for us to gain some knowledge and understanding of why our children are shy, mischievous, sad, slow in school, destructive, etc. Children are strongly influenced by the thinking, feeling patterns established in the home, and he or she makes daily choices and decisions from that belief system. If the home environment is not conducive to trusting and loving, the child will seek trust, love, and compassion elsewhere. Many gangs are a place where children feel safe. They form a family bond, no matter how dysfunctional it is. I truly believe that a lot of hardships could be avoided if we could only get young people to ask themselves one important question before they act. Will this make me feel better about myself? We can help our teenagers see their choices in each situation. Choice and responsibility put power back into their hands. It enables them to do something without feeling like victims of the system. If we can teach children that they are not victims, and that it is possible for them to change their experiences by taking responsibility for their own lives, we will begin to see major breakthroughs. It is vitally important to keep the lines of communication open with children. especially when they're in their teen years. Usually what happens when children start to talk about their likes and dislikes is that they are told over and over again, don't say that, don't do that, don't feel that, don't be that way, don't express that, don't. And eventually the children stop communicating and sometimes leave home. If you want to have your children around as you grow older, keep the lines of communication open when they are younger. Applaud your child's uniqueness. Allow your teenagers to express themselves in their own style, even if you think it's justified. Don't make them wrong or tear them down. Goodness knows I've been through many, many fads in my lifetime, and so will you and your teenagers. What Do You Really Want for Your Children is an excellent book by Wayne Dyer. Children learn from our actions. Children never do what we tell them to do. They do what we do. We can't say don't smoke or don't drink or don't do drugs if we do them. We have to serve as examples and live the sort of life we want our children to express. When parents are willing to work on loving themselves, it's amazing to see the harmony that is achieved within the family. Children respond with a new sense of self-esteem and start to value and respect who they are. An exercise in self-esteem that you and your children can do together is to make a list of some of the goals you would like to achieve. Ask your children to write down how they see themselves in 10 years, in 1 year, in 3 months. What kind of lives do they want to have? What kind of friends would be most beneficial? Have them list their goals with short descriptions of each, as well as how they can make their dreams come true. And you do the same. All of you might keep the list nearby to remind yourself of your goals. In 3 months' time, go over the list together. Have the goals changed. Don't let your children beat themselves up if they didn't get as far as they wanted. They can always revise their lists. What is most important to give young people is something positive to look forward to. Separation and divorce. If there is separation and/or divorce in the family, it is important that each parent be supportive. It's very stressful for a child to be told that the other parent is no good. As the parent, you want to love yourself through the fears and anger as much as possible. The children will pick up feelings from you. If you're going through a lot of turmoil and pain, they will surely pick that up from you. Explain to your children that your stuff has nothing to do with them and their inner worth. Don't let them get the idea that anything that's happened is their fault, because that's what most children think. Let them know that you love them very much and will always be there for them. I suggest you do mirror work with your children every morning. Do affirmations that will get you through the trying times easily and effortlessly so that everyone will be okay. Release your painful experiences with love and affirm happiness for all concerned. There's a wonderful group called the California State Task Force to promote self-esteem and personal and social responsibility. It was created in 1987 by Assemblyman John Vasconcellos. Among the appointed members are Jack Canfield and Dr. Emmett Miller. I support its efforts in researching and making recommendations to the government to bring self-esteem programs into the schools. Other states are following suit by including self-esteem curriculum in the classroom. Look into these groups. I believe that we are on the brink of some major changes in our society, especially with regard to understanding our own self-worth. If teachers especially can get their own self-worth on the right track, they will help our children tremendously. Children reflect the social and economic pressures with which we are faced. Any program having to do with self-esteem will need to encompass students, parents, and teachers, as well as businesses and organizations. Growing older graciously. So many of us fear growing old and looking old. We make growing old so terrible and unattractive. Yet it is a normal and natural process of living. If we can't accept our inner child and be comfortable with who we were and who we are, how can we accept the next stage? If you don't grow old, what is the alternative? You leave the planet. As a culture, we have created what I call youth worship. It's all very well and good to love ourselves at certain ages, but why can't we love ourselves as we get older? We will eventually go through every age of life. Many women feel a lot of anxiety and fear when they think about getting old. The day community also deals with a lot of issues having to do with youth and looks and loss of beauty. Getting old may mean getting wrinkles and gray hair and saggy skin. And yes, I want to grow old. It's all part of being here. We are on this planet to experience every part of life. I can understand that we don't want to get old and sick, so let's separate those two ideas. Let's not imagine or envision ourselves getting sick as a way to die. I do not personally believe that we have to die with illness. Instead, when it is our time to leave, when we have accomplished what we came here to do, we can take a nap or go to bed at night and leave peacefully. We don't have to become deathly ill. We don't have to be hooked to machines. We don't have to lie suffering in a nursing home in order to leave the planet. There's a tremendous amount of information available on how to stay healthy. Don't put it off. Do it now. When we get older, we want to feel wonderful so we can continue to experience new adventures. I read something a while ago that intrigued me. It was an article about a San Francisco medical school that had discovered that the way we age is not determined by genes, but by something they call the aging set point, a biological time clock that exists in our minds. This mechanism actually monitors when and how we begin to age. The set point or aging clock is regulated in great part by one important factor, our attitudes towards getting old. For instance, if you believe that 35 is middle-aged, that belief triggers biological changes in your body that cause it to accelerate the aging process when you reach 35. Isn't that fascinating? Somewhere, somehow, we decide what is middle age and what is old age. Where are you setting that aging set point within you? I have this image in my mind that I'm going to live to be 96 years and still be active, so it's very important that I keep myself healthy. Remember, too, what we give out, we get back. Be aware of how you treat older people, because when you get old, that will be the way you are treated. If you believe certain concepts about old people, again, you are forming ideas that your subconscious will respond to. Our beliefs, our thoughts, our concepts about life and about ourselves always become true for us. Remember, I believe that you choose your parents before you were born in order to learn valuable lessons. Your higher self knew the experiences that were necessary for you to proceed on your spiritual course. So whatever you came to work out with your parents, get on with it. No matter what they say or do or said or did, you are here ultimately to love yourself. As parents, allow your children to love themselves by giving them the space to feel safe and to express themselves in positive, harmless ways. Remember, too, just as we choose our parents, our children also chose us. There are important lessons for all of us to work out. Parents who love themselves will find it easier to teach their children about self-love. When we feel good about ourselves, we can teach our children self-worth by example. The more we work on loving ourselves, the more our children will realize that it's an okay thing to do.